Welcome into the Steelers Talk live show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. It is a beautiful Thursday evening. We're getting ready to kick off Week 15 in the National Football League tonight with Thursday Night Football. But before you guys enjoy some football tonight, we got some great Steelers content coming your way. We've already had a pretty busy day here, Ponsi. Already getting 2 videos out on the channel. Now we got 3 more segments to get into today. All right, first up on the show, we're going to get into the latest news and rumors surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have another update on TJ Watt and others as the Steelers had their first practice of the week getting ready for their Monday Night Football matchup versus the Miami Dolphins. We also have some other rumors surrounding the quarterback position, which are pretty juicy in the AFC North, surrounding a certain Cincinnati Bengals quarterback that will go unnamed, but I think you guys know who I'm talking about there. Then we'll get into Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest big board and his top 10 round 1 draft targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Always a really fun video to do this time of year. And then we'll get into your questions surrounding the black and gold here in the Week 15 mailbag here on the Steelers Talk live show here on a Thursday. And if you guys want to get your question on the show today, if you want to make the cut, you guys can put your questions down there in the live chat room using hashtag Steelers, or you guys can super chat to get on today's show as well. All super chatted questions are guaranteed to get on the program tonight. So if you guys want to send in a super chat of some kind, we would greatly appreciate your guys' support. It's not required by any stretch of the imagination, but just know if you put your question in using hashtag Steelers, Ponsi can choose not to put it in the mailbag. So if your question doesn't make the mailbag, don't get mad at me, guys. Blame Ponsi, all right? So really do appreciate your guys' support. I want to see who the real ones are. Down there in the comment section, we got about 100 people filing in right now. Spam those me's in the chat if you've already liked the show. We got about 100 people watching, just about 23 likes, though. I would like to get to at least 40 likes before we get into our first segment today. We got Fat Grayson, we got Czar Craig, we got Eric Dexter, we got Steelers Fanboy, we got Parker Brennan, we've got my lovely fiance Cassie Vogt. Everyone say hi to Cassie for me in the chat. We got Steelers Fanboy, Eric Dexter, Noah, Mr. Deadhead, Tristan, got Levi Football, we've got Mr. Deadhead, we've got JT Clover, we got Sterling Jacobs, we've got Tristan White, Bodie Irwin, Zach. We've got a good crew of Steelers fans ready to talk some Steelers football here on a Thursday evening. And I'll bring on our producer now. Mr. Ponsi is here. And Ponsi, it's definitely been an interesting last 24 hours. Joe Burrow is indicating that he might be wanting out of Cincinnati this offseason. TJ Watt has been hospitalized with a lung injury. Your kind of thoughts on the latest news cycle here over the last 24 hours.
I mean, it's been kind of crazy for the AFC North in general all year. But, I mean, prayers go out to TJ Watt first and foremost. It's a very scary situation. Reminds me a lot of the Tyrod Taylor situation in 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
Where he had a cracked rib right before the game. He got an injection, ended up being hospitalized. I mean, you never want to speculate, but it does sound like that's what may have happened.
Yeah, there's only so many ways you can injure a lung, and if you're getting treatment and then all of a sudden you have to go to the hospital for a lung injury, that indicates to me you were probably getting an injection in your midsection and it ends up puncturing your lung. So that's what I'm guessing it is. When it comes to these kinds of injuries, it doesn't happen very often, obviously. But when it happened to Tyrod back in 2020, he had to miss 4 games. Now, different positions. Who knows, how serious this lung puncture or potential lung puncture is compared to Tyrod's. How long he's going to be out. I know T.J. Watt is one of the toughest individuals you'll find in the football world. So I'm sure T.J. will be back as soon as he possibly can. But with Tyrod missing 4 games with that punctured lung in 2020, if Watt has to miss that same amount of time, that's going to keep him out for the rest of this regular season, Ponsi. And we're in the middle of a race here for the division, and the Steelers are 1-11 over the last 3 years, okay, since 2022, when T.J. Watt has either been out or has played through a rather serious injury, all right? And that is not a good record, obviously. You lost every single game at the end of last season after T.J. Watt got hurt, all right? And he wasn't the same player, and it really affected the Steelers' defense. All right, then in 2023, he gets injured in the final week of the year against Baltimore, can't play in the playoff game, you lose that game. Then in 2022, after the first game, gets injured, has to get surgery, misses about the rest of the first half of the season, and they go 1-6 during that stretch. So just not very good. If he has to miss these last 4 games, it definitely makes you nervous. But I will say, I think this year's Steelers team is maybe more suited to handle a TJ Watt injury than they have been in years past. You do have Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig to start for you at outside linebacker if TJ's unable to go. And by the way, it sounds like Watt will at least miss this week against the Miami Dolphins, and it's going to be Highsmith and Herbig playing on the edge for the Steelers here. So in terms of your level of concern, Ponsi, where are you at? I think right now I'm probably at around a 5 or a 6. I think Herbig and Highsmith are capable of taking the starting role here while Watt gets better. But, I mean, the 1-11 record in games where Watt, is injured definitely scares me.
And I think I'm probably at a 6 as well. Not just because, I do believe in Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith, but more so there's been injury concerns about them too. And, I mean, it gets kind of thin. I mean, as much as I like Jack Sawyer, I don't know he even compares to Nick Herbig on the team.
No, he doesn't. It's definitely a downgrade, but, I think Jack has shown some good things this year, and he's more of the skill level of like a normal rotational third edge rusher. So I think the Steelers' pass rush does take a hit if TJ's not able to play in the games coming up here. But in terms of your starting duo that's going to be out there on the field most of the time, I don't think it's going to be that much of a drop-off. Yeah. And, Watt isn't as dominant as he's been in years past. All right, he's been more of a good player this year, a really good one, but he hasn't been a dominant player. And I think that the Steelers can survive here defensively. At least I hope they can if Watt has to miss a couple of games. But obviously we're hoping TJ makes a full and speedy recovery. We hope he can get back onto the field, especially for any potential playoff games the Steelers will have this year. You guys can take a look at his stats. Obviously, he's been one of the more dominant players in the entire National Football League for a very long time now. 19 TFLs in each of his last 2 seasons, and through 13 games this year, he has 10 TFLs and 3 forced fumbles. His numbers aren't exactly, in line with some of the years that he's had in his career, but he's still a star-level player that won't be on the field probably for Monday. Of course, we'll get you guys the latest updates on TJ Watt as the week goes on, but at this point, it's not looking good for TJ Watt's chances to play on Monday night. Darth Sean with a 5 says, "Get well, TJ. You are the man. Let's go, Steelers." Yeah, man, I think I speak for everybody in Steelers Nation saying that we hope TJ's okay. Obviously, he's only 31 years old, and he's got a wife and kids and all these different things, and we don't want anything super serious to happen in terms of his long-term health here. So obviously, that's the number one concern. Football comes second. But
getting better is the first concern.
Exactly, no question about that. So we'll just have to see what happens here in the weeks to come, in the days and weeks to come. All right, so we're going to get into our first segment of the day here, guys. We got a lot to talk about on the show. First up, a very fun news and rumors segment here. We're going to be talking about the latest injury updates on TJ Watt and the other injured players on the Steelers roster as they prepare for this Monday Night Football matchup. And then we're going to do some speculating at the quarterback position. All right, some very fun rumors content in the second half of our news and rumors show here coming up. Then we'll get into Mel Kiper Jr.'s round 1 draft targets for the Steelers. Very intriguing video there. And then we'll get into your questions. Again, hashtag Steelers or Super Chat to get your questions on this week's show. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for stopping by here on Thursday evening. Make sure you click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. Without further ado, let's get into our first segment on today's show. Tonight on Steelers Talk, we have the latest Week 15 injury updates for the Pittsburgh Steelers for you guys right here on Steelers Talk. And then Dan Orlovsky said on ESPN earlier this week that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be in play to acquire a superstar-level quarterback in the 2026 offseason. I'll reveal who that superstar quarterback is, why I don't think they'll get that quarterback, but they might get an opportunity to get a different one because of this opportunity. It'll all reveal itself at the end of today's show, guys, so make sure you stick stick around. But before we get into the content today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button for our daily coverage here on Steelers Talk of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That includes daily Steelers videos, 2 of them a day, okay? And with this offseason coming up, we got obviously free agency and draft coverage coming up in the weeks and months to come. We got breaking news coverage every time there's a big injury update, every time the Steelers make a trade this offseason, every time they make a big signing this offseason. Whenever big breaking news hits, we're going to have a video for you guys on this channel for you guys to enjoy for free. We also have weekly live content. We got Tuesdays and Thursdays. We go live to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then we also go live for our live watch parties for every single Steelers game day. We have the largest Steelers watch parties anywhere on the YouTube platform, and all of that content, guys, is 100% free for you guys to enjoy. So if you love the Pittsburgh Steelers and you guys want your daily dose of Steelers news and rumors content, this is the place where you get that. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button to join the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere here on YouTube. So we'll start right here with the latest on TJ Watt. Mike Tomlin talked after practice here recently on Watt's status, and he says, quote, "I'm a little bit cautious about what I say because I am not a medical expert, but to make a long story short, he was experiencing some discomfort when he was at the facility yesterday. So we took him to the docs, and they're God, I love how the quote on the parentheses there says doctor says, and they're going through some procedures. He stayed overnight in the hospital. He has a lung situation that's been addressed. I think he has some testing and so forth ahead of him this afternoon, and that's all I know at this juncture. He and I communicated last night. He was comfortable, and his status for Monday night is really up in the air. I think what transpires this afternoon is going to provide more information for us. I just don't have a lot as I stand here today. I don't know specifically when it occurred. I know he was in the cafeteria at one point, and that's kind of when I got wind of it. So just talking about this situation, guys, with apparently Adam Schefter said that he was getting treatment, and that's when the incident occurred. He had to go to the hospital afterwards. It kind of strikes me as a situation that's pretty similar to what happened to Tyrod Taylor in 2020, where he had cracked ribs in the Week 1 performance that year. He wanted to play through it in Week 2. Got an injection in his midsection, a pain-reducing injection, and ended up puncturing his lung. He had to be hospitalized. And in that particular situation, guys, Taylor had to miss 4 weeks after being hospitalized with that punctured lung before he was able to return. And if that's what happened to TJ Watt here, which, obviously it sounds pretty similar in terms of the situations here, if that's what happened to TJ Watt here, there's a potential that he could miss some time, and as much up to 4 weeks is what the precedent is at right here. And of course, if that happens, he's missing the rest of the regular season. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are actually 1-11, not 0-11. They're 1-11 since 2022 when TJ Watt has been injured, whether that's he's missing the game or whether he's playing with an injury. They've been 1-11. Their only win coming in 2022 against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There we go. Ponsi fixed it for us there, guys. So obviously that's not a great record. And with this, with the Steelers being right in the thick of the AFC North division race right now, like if history holds here, the Steelers might win 1 or maybe even 0 of their final 4 games if TJ Watt has to miss the rest of the regular season. So that is a little bit scary. But I will say, guys, I think that this Steelers team is built to handle a TJ Watt injury better than in years past. Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig are very capable players at the outside linebacker position. So even though TJ is obviously a big player for this Steelers team, if he does have to miss some time, I do think this Steelers team can still get the job done, get the wins needed to hopefully get them a home playoff game and a division championship this year. Some other injury updates around the Pittsburgh Steelers. 4 other players did not practice today. Derek Harmon, James Pierre, Andrews Pete, and Ben Skoranek are all working through various injuries. We'll obviously have more updates on those guys as the week goes on, but these 4 did not practice today. And then the big one on that list is, of course, Derek Harmon, who's missed the last 2 weeks with a knee injury. But Ray Fittipaldo put this tweet out earlier saying Derek Harmon is optimistic about playing on Monday night. He said he injured the same knee that kept him out for the first 2 weeks to start the season, but he said it's not the same injury. So the fact that Fittipaldo is saying that Harmon is optimistic about playing on Monday night is certainly a good sign that he could play against the Miami Dolphins, which could prove to be crucial for the Steelers' defensive effort, especially in terms of stopping the run. 2 players were limited participants that are noteworthy today, and that was Darnell Washington with a concussion, as well as Malik Harrison also dealing with concussion protocol. But the fact that they were at practice for the first practice of the week here in a limited capacity is a good sign that both of these guys could play on Monday night. And these two players are pretty big, all right? Darnell Washington, obviously, it's going to be a cold weather game on Monday night against Miami. I guarantee you none of those soft-ass Dolphins players are going to want to tackle Darnell Washington in space. And then Malik Harrison is a thumper run defender for the Steelers. Having him in the fold to lay the boom on the Miami Dolphins running backs would be big as well. And then guys that were full participants today, DK Metcalf had a little bit of an abdomen type of thing in Baltimore. He had to be hospitalized on Sunday night. But he's fine. He was a full participant in practice today. Kyle Duggar is expected to be back this week with that hand injury that kept him out of last week's game against the Ravens. Patrick Queen has been dealing with a hip issue. He was a full participant today. And then Keanu Benson has been dealing with an ankle injury. He suffered that early in the Ravens game. He was able to finish the game, though, and he was a full participant in practice this afternoon. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will TJ Watt play again this season? And I'm talking about the regular season here. Type yes or no down there in the comment section for today's pin question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Ethos. And while I tell you about today's sponsor, let me know if you think TJ Watt plays again during the regular season. But before we get into the rest of today's show, check out our friends at Ethos. And guys, the summer before I started here at Chat Sports, my family unfortunately lost my late grandfather. And as you tend to do when you lose a loved one, you begin to think about your own mortality and what would happen to the people dependent on you if something were to happen. And with today's sponsor, Ethos, your family is protected. If something were to happen to me, I want the last thing the people I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills. So I trust Ethos to keep them protected. As you probably already know, however, the process for obtaining life insurance can be super confusing or just straight up annoying with how tedious the process can be. That's where our friends at Ethos come in. As of March of 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There is no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required. You just answer a few health questions to get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos today. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily to get your free quote today. Application times may vary, rates may vary, and a big thank you to Ethos for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So it appears that the Cincinnati Bengals might be bungling the best quarterback they've had in franchise history here, as Bengals superstar quarterback Joe Burrow hinted this week during his media availability that he is unhappy in Cincinnati, and some people are speculating that he could demand a trade out of Cincinnati or potentially even retire after the 2025 NFL season. This is what Burrow had to say earlier this week. He says, if I want to keep doing this, talking about playing football, then what am I trying to do with myself? I have to have fun doing it. If it's not fun, then what am I doing it for? There's just a lot of things going on right now, football related, personally, all of the above. And a lot of people are taking these comments to mean that Burrow is going to want out of Cincinnati this offseason one way or another. And, could we see Burrow kind of pull an Andrew Luck here at only 29 years old? Obviously, Luck was another guy that had really poor offensive line play throughout his career, dealt with a lot of injuries, and he just got to a point where, he was kind of done with the whole process and just quit football. And obviously, Joe Burrow has been somebody that has not been protected properly in Cincinnati, has taken a lot of hits, has had a lot of injuries, really serious injuries as well. And, at some point, that's just got to be really tiring for the Cincinnati Bengal quarterback. Could we see him retire at the end of the year if the team, refuses to trade him? Absolutely, that's a possibility. But I do think it's more likely that Burrow demands a trade, and the Bengals, I absolutely think, can find a suitor to be able to accommodate their needs in a trade package for a guy as good as Joe Burrow is. I mean, he's put in the same conversation as guys like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. He's considered a truly elite superstar at the position who gives you a chance to make him an MVP candidate and put you into the Super Bowl conversation every single year if you have a guy like him as your quarterback. But Dan Orlovsky from ESPN earlier this week said, after he heard those comments from the Bengals, that he listed Pittsburgh among the teams that should be looking to pursue an in-division trade here for Joe Burrow's services. This is what Orlovsky had to say on ESPN earlier this week. He says, it would shock me if 3 teams weren't on the phone today after what he said yesterday, figuring out how do we make him part of our football team now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Jets, Raiders, and Steelers. Those would be the 3 where if I'm those 3 organizations, I'm in a brainstorming meeting right now where we are figuring out a way to propose a way to get Joe Burrow, and I don't necessarily care what it takes. Now, personally, guys, I would absolutely sell the farm to get a guy like Joe Burrow, all right, especially because of the frustration that we have had at the quarterback position since Big Ben got older and then eventually retired. This team has not had, a top 10, let alone top 5 quarterback like Burrow is in a very, very long time, all right, since prime Big Ben Roethlisberger. So to get a guy like that would be absolutely worth, however many first-round picks as they want. However, there's just no way that this is going to happen, all right? There's just no way that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to trade a 29-year-old superstar quarterback to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they're arch rivals. There's absolutely no way in hell. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers could literally offer them every draft pick they have in perpetuity forever, and they would not take this deal, all right? Because they wouldn't want the Pittsburgh Steelers to get an elite quarterback and have to play Joe Burrow twice a year. Doesn't matter how many draft picks they would get from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then also in terms of, even if they were, open to trading him to Pittsburgh, I don't think the Steelers have enough draft capital in the first and second rounds in the years to come to compete with some of these other teams that have multiple first-round picks coming up in upcoming drafts. But even Dan Orlovsky knows that this is unlikely here. He said on that same podcast there in that same show on ESPN, quote, I know the Steelers getting Burrow is unlikely because of them being in division. So even Orlovsky admits, even though he says the Steelers should be trying to get Burrow, that a trade in division is unlikely at this point. But something to consider here, guys, is that I think a team to monitor for Burrow's services is the Los Angeles Rams. And I actually think right now, if Burrow ends up demanding a trade out of Cincinnati this offseason, I think the Rams are the favorites to get him, okay? And I think that this is a team that nobody's really thinking about right now because they're a Super Bowl favorite right now with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. But, some of the reasons why I think this makes sense, all right? Number one, Stafford is getting older, and he's had back issues, all right? The Los Angeles Rams have been stacking first-round and second-round picks here because they want to get a new, younger, up-and-coming guy to match with Sean McVay, their head coach, and they've kind of set themselves up for this kind of exit ramp to go get a younger guy, and Joe Burrow at just 29 years old absolutely fits that bill, and they've really shown that with kind of the year-to-year situation they've been in with Matthew Stafford, essentially just giving him one-year extensions year in and year out to give him the money that he's looking for, but to not commit to him long-term. So it certainly seems like if there's an off-ramp to a more long-term option at the caliber of Joe Burrow, the Los Angeles Rams would certainly take that. Also, Burrow has a no-trade clause, so he'd have to go to a team that he would sign off on, and I definitely think he would sign off on Sean McVay, Puka Nacua, and maybe even Devontae Adams if he doesn't retire. And then in terms of the trade capital, I think Cincinnati would like the Rams as a trade partner because they can offer him 3 first-round picks in the next 2 years, two of those being in next year's draft, so that would set Cincinnati up to take their next franchise quarterback in Pittsburgh next spring. And then one of those picks is likely to be in the top 10 because, of course, the Atlanta Falcons traded their first-round pick this year to the Rams last year, okay? So this trade package, this situation, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think Joe Burrow going to the LA Rams is probably the most likely situation here if Burrow does get traded this offseason. And if LA gets Burrow, that means Stafford could be traded. And, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, we know they're in very short-term win-now mode, okay? Because Cam Hayward has a very, very limited time left in his career. He's only got 1 year left, according to him, after this season. And Matthew Stafford is about as good of a short-term answer at quarterback as you can possibly get. 37 years old, so obviously getting up there. He has had back issues, so certainly there's some risk there as well. But he's playing at a super high level right now. He's a Super Bowl champion. Of course, had that game-winning drive in a Super Bowl. I mean, how many guys are going to be available next offseason that can say that? And he has had those back issues that you'd have to keep your eye on. And because he is older and you might get 1 or 2 years out of him, that might drive down his trade value a little bit. But if Pittsburgh is still in win-now mode next year, and with Cam Hayward going into his final year of his career, I'm guessing they're once again going to try and go quote-unquote all in to try and win a Super Bowl. Stafford would be the best veteran option that they could hope for, all right? And maybe Aaron Rodgers is coming back next year or whatever. We'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out, but it's very possible Rodgers ends up retiring. And if that happens and you're looking for a new veteran quarterback, I'm taking Matthew Stafford over everybody else that you could potentially get. Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, all these other guys that are gettable on the open market next offseason. I'm taking Matthew Stafford, and I'm paying a premium to get him here in Pittsburgh if my goal is to win a Super Bowl in 2026. I mean, you guys can just take a look at the numbers. This guy is a borderline top 5 quarterback in the National Football League right now. He's arguably the leader in the MVP race. He's right neck and neck with Drake May right now, and that is at 37 years old, all right? So if you're looking for a dynamic, elite quarterback with amazing arm talent, man, some of the best arm talent in NFL history, some of the best mental processing ability in NFL history, and you want one shot to go and try and get Cam Hayward a Super Bowl in 2026, if Stafford becomes available because the Rams get Burrow, I think the Steelers have to go all in and try and get Matthew Stafford. And you guys can take a look at just how good this guy still is. I mean, he is top 3 in many key metrics like success rate, big-time throw percentage, where he ranks first, and turnover-worthy play percentage. He's super efficient. He's in top 10 in pretty much every single efficiency metric that you look at. I mean, everything about Matthew Stafford's game, even at 37 years old, tells you he's still a star-level player and arguably still a superstar-level player. And with Cam Hayward potentially going into his final season next year, it's in the final year of his deal, and he says this is the last contract he's going to have before he retires. If you don't win a Super Bowl this year with Aaron Rodgers and the current crew of Steelers, which let's be honest seems likely this year, it'd be a hell of a run if the Steelers turn this season around into a Super Bowl winning season. That's going to be something here where you're going to have to go all for broke on one season if you're going to try and get Cam Hayward that ring that I think we all agree he deserves, because he's been one of the greatest players in Pittsburgh Steelers history and he doesn't have a ring yet. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers would absolutely go all in to get a guy like Matthew Stafford if he's made available. In terms of the price tag, I know it would seem a lot, guys, but if they are going all in on a Super Bowl in 2026, I think there will be other teams that will be willing to pay a very high price tag for Matthew Stafford for a short-term shot at a Super Bowl championship, and I think it would probably cost a first-round pick. All right, and I don't know where the Steelers would be drafting. That pick would probably be in the 20s, and I know some Steelers fans are going to be like, don't give up your future for a short-term shot at a Super Bowl, and I understand that perspective as well. But I think the reality of the situation is that teams like Minnesota and potentially even Las Vegas, a team that was very much in on the Matthew Stafford sweepstakes this year, this last offseason, I should say, are going to be once again trying to get Matthew Stafford. All right, Pete Carroll is really old. He wants a short-term shot at a Super Bowl. The Minnesota Vikings, obviously the J.J. McCarthy situation is not working out. They still have a good roster. Justin Jefferson, hell, the Vikings might even be in play for Joe Burrow as well. They got Justin Jefferson, his former LSU teammate, there in Minnesota. I'm sure Burrow would love to play for Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. That's another team to watch out for when it comes to Burrow. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. I think it's an interesting idea. If the Rams get Joe Burrow, that would open up Matthew Stafford to potentially be traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is this something that you would do? Would you give up a first-round pick next year to get a short-term shot at a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford? Type A for accept or D for decline. Let me know your guys' thoughts down there in the comment section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. I really do appreciate all of you guys for stopping by here today. We'll have more Steelers content coming your way all throughout the rest of the week. So if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, Ponsi, first segment in the books. Coming up is Mel Kiper Jr.'s round 1 draft targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But what do you think about that idea of potentially going out and trading for Matthew Stafford if Burrow ends up going to the LA Rams? I think it's an interesting idea, and would you be willing to trade a first-round pick for 1 or 2 years of Matthew Stafford as the starting quarterback before he retires? I
mean, obviously, I think that Matthew Stafford is a top 10, arguably top 5 this season quarterback. And I think, a first-round pick sounds like a lot, but if you're talking mid-20s, it's really not that bad. And, I mean, 2 years of sustainability, and with Matthew Stafford, I don't really think he's on the decline. I think he's been playing some of his best football, if anything. So, I mean, I'd be perfectly fine with this, even if it was only 2 years. So, it just continues to feel like, though, that you would be kicking the can down the road does.
In terms of the long-term option. But, like, I understand why Steelers fans want the long-term option and all that stuff, but, like, just the thing that you have to understand is that they are desperate to get T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, these guys that have been with the organization a long time, a ring before they retire. And Cam he's got a very limited amount of time, man. He's got the rest of this year, and he's got next year, all right? And if the goal is to get him a ring before he retires, which is absolutely the goal, that's the type of situation that, teams give up their first-round draft pick for a top-5 QB like Matthew Stafford. Even if you only get 2 years out of him, that you're not giving up any future first-round picks, so you can still take your quarterback of the future in future years, but you're pretty much just giving up your first-round pick in 2026 and a potential 10-year or more starter to get an elite quarterback in your building for a short-term stretch to try and win a ring. And I think the Steelers would do that. I think the Steelers are absolutely, especially if they're drafting or in the 20s and not in the teens. And they make the playoffs this year, I absolutely think that this is something that they would do, because even if you want to go get a long-term option at quarterback, like if you're in the 20s, how many first-round quarterbacks are really going to be available for you? And the only ones that are available are the guys that you're going to have to trade up for and probably give up your 2027 first-round pick for, right? So I don't know, between those two options, if my goal is to win a Super Bowl right now and go all in to get Cam Hayward a ring before he retires, I think I would rather do the Matthew Stafford one than trade 2 first-round picks for, like, Ty Simpson, for example.
And, I'd much rather have this than Kyler Murray.
Yeah, exactly. Would you rather trade a first for Stafford or a second for Kyler?
Like, I wouldn't want to touch Kyler with a
I would rather trade
I
would rather trade a first for Stafford, personally.
Yeah.
But, like, obviously, this is all dependent on Burrow getting traded to LA, right? Which multiple things have to happen. Number one, Burrow has to demand a trade out of Cincinnati. Number two, Cincinnati has to accept that request. Number three, they have to come to some sort of agreement. And, four, Burrow doesn't want to go to, like, New York or some other team that could theoretically put together a trade package here that usurps LA. But I think LA would be the most likely destination, Ponzi, because they've got both elements here, all right? They've got a team that Burrow would want to go play for, and they've got the draft capital to make the Bengals happy. I'm not sure if Minnesota has the draft capital, especially I don't think they can match LA's, trade package.
Certainly not.
Like 2 first-round picks next year and another one after that? Like there's
the whole thing is, a lot of people underrate this part of it. It's the Falcons' first-rounder.
Yeah,
and they stink.
It's a top 10 pick plus another one in 2027. Like, I just don't think Minnesota can put together anything that would match LA's offer.
They'd have to do like 5 first-rounders.
So unless like Joe Burrow straight up says, and you can't trade 5 first-rounders.
Or like, I'm exaggerating.
You can only trade 3 at a time.
Yeah.
And there's just nothing that Minnesota can do unless they trade like Justin Jefferson, which they're not going to do, to match the value that LA could potentially put out there for them.
9 and 3 first-rounders.
But I'm telling you, man, this is not crazy. I really maybe Minnesota outbids Pittsburgh for Stafford's services. That's definitely a possibility. But like, I'm telling you, man, if Rodgers retires and he's not coming back next year, and they're looking for the veteran quarterback option to try and get Cam Hayward that ring before he retires, Matthew Stafford is the guy that would give you the best chance at that.
Yeah,
period. Because you're not getting Burrow. They're not going to trade him to Pittsburgh, obviously, for obvious reasons. It's just unrealistic. But like, if Burrow goes to LA and Stafford is all of a sudden now on the trade market, the Pittsburgh Steelers are absolutely a team that would pay whatever it costs to go get Matthew Stafford. And, in terms of true trade value, I would say he's probably more worth like a second-round pick just because of the short-term nature that you would have him for. But like, sometimes when you are in a position where you want to go all in on a specific season, you're willing to pay a premium to get the player that you want. All right, the Rams did this when they traded for him. All right, when they traded Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks in exchange for Stafford. They got a Super Bowl out of it in year 1, all right? So, I understand, some of the concerns with trading a first-round pick because that's a player that could be a starter or a potential star for you for 10 or more years. All right, but, chances to win Super Bowls don't come around very often, and opportunities to get truly elite superstar quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford don't come around very often either. And if you're not giving up draft picks in future years, I mean, I think it's definitely something to consider. And now, another thing to consider here, Ponzi, is that the draft is in Pittsburgh next year, so giving up your first-round pick and having that moment of drafting somebody in your home city on night one will be taken away from you. But, like, in terms of your chances of winning a Super Bowl next year in 2026, there's no draft pick that you could draft in 2026 that gives you a better chance than trading that pick for Matthew Stafford.
I really think this. I think if the Rams do somehow trade for Joe Burrow, Stafford will go for a second.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, if you can get him for a second, that's even better, right? Because you still have your first-round pick.
And you still have that moment.
Now, obviously, you still have other things that you have to address on the team. Wide receiver, corner is going to be something they're going to have to address again in the offseason. They're going to have to address, probably get another defensive tackle. They might have to get more linebacker help. They're going to have to get another offensive guard. There's certainly things that this team has to address. But, like, they've got 12 draft picks, all right? They can address those other positions while also trading one pick for Matthew Stafford.
And they've been good at drafting.
And also there's free agency, okay? And so, trading a first-round pick for this player that is a superstar-level quarterback that would give you a legit chance to win a Super Bowl before Cam Hayward retires, I mean, you have 11 other draft picks. You have free agency.
You have re-signing periods.
Exactly. You could do all these different things. I'm just saying it's an interesting idea, all right? And I think as this Burrow situation continues to unfold, it's going to be a situation that we continue to get more and more smoke about as we head into next year. Because, we'll see about Aaron Rodgers. If he plays the way he played last week, I think he's coming back next year, especially if they don't win the Super Bowl. All right, but if you don't win the Super Bowl this year and Rodgers ends up retiring, you're going to need somebody else to try and win a Super Bowl next year before Cam Hayward retires. And if you are going with a rookie quarterback next year and you are admitting to yourself, we're not winning a Super Bowl in 2026, then you probably trade away Cam Hayward, right? So obviously you're not trading for Matthew Stafford if you're just saying we're rebuilding. So, it's going to depend on what the Steelers' mindset is. But if I know Mike Tomlin, if I know Omar Khan, I know how this Steelers organization operates in the offseason. They've been operating these last few years trying to get Cam Hayward and TJ Watt a ring in the short term before Cam retires. And if they have that same mindset next offseason, and I think they will, I think Matthew Stafford is the guy that they target because I think Joe Burrow is probably going to be a Ram next year.
I think their second option is probably Kyler Murray, though.
And then Kyler Murray would probably be number 2 on their list, which is just, I would much rather go a couple years with Stafford. And by the way, you can still draft a quarterback and have him develop behind Stafford. You could even stick with Will Howard and have him develop behind
a lot of the fans
Matthew
like
Stafford.
Will Howard.
So that plan could still be alive if you go with this Stafford plan. So I understand some of the hesitations there. I'm just saying it's an interesting idea. But talking about the draft here, if they don't trade their first-round pick for Matthew Stafford next year, who are they going to spend it on? Well, here in just a second, we're going to be talking about some Mel Kiper Jr. draft targets. But if you have a question about the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it's about TJ Watt, whether it's about Aaron Rodgers, whether it's about the offense, defense, the run defense, Derek Harmon, whatever, we'll make sure to get to all your questions in the mailbag coming up here in about 20 minutes or so. Use hashtag Steelers down there in the live chat room to get your question on the mailbag today. And to guarantee your question gets on the mailbag today, you guys can super chat any dollar amount. $2, $5, $10, doesn't matter. Whatever you guys send in, we'll make sure to get your question on the mailbag. We greatly appreciate your guys' support. So again, we're going to be getting into Mel Kiper Jr.'s round 1 draft targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, guys, let's dive right in to the latest draft rumors surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we have Mel Kiper Jr., ESPN draft analyst. His list of the 10 Steelers draft targets in round 1 of the 2026 NFL draft from his latest 2026 big board. A really interesting video, one of my favorite videos to do during the season here, to kind of take a look here and take a sneak peek at some of the players that could be on the Steelers' radar in round 1 this year. Now, before we get into the content today, we do have a lot of draft content coming up here on Steelers Talk coming up in the offseason. We got in-depth prospect analysis for all these different types of players, positional rankings at every single position of need for the Steelers this upcoming spring. Also pre-draft visit trackers for the Combine, for the Senior Bowl, for pre-draft visits, all that different stuff. We'll let you guys know who the Steelers are meeting with and who they're being linked to. And then also we're going to have weekly 7-round mock drafts once the season finishes up here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And all that draft content, guys, it's 100% free. So if you love the NFL draft and you love the Pittsburgh Steelers, Steelers Talk by Chat Sports is going to be the channel that you're going to want to be subscribed to, all right? So I really appreciate all of your guys' support. And before we get into Mel Kiper Jr.'s list here, I want to talk about Pittsburgh's potential needs in the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. Now, obviously, the draft is in Pittsburgh, which is certainly fun. But right now, I can see them drafting any of 6 positions. Now, obviously, this list is going to get curated and trimmed down as free agency and trades and all this stuff that happens before the draft happens over the next couple months. But right now, I could see quarterback being the pick. I could see a wide receiver being taken, offensive guard to replace Isaac Seumalo potentially, a defensive tackle to go alongside Derek Harmon and Y.A. Black for the future, cornerback, or potentially even an inside linebacker if there's a good enough one in this class that makes it to the Steelers pick. And right now, the Steelers' current draft position is 20th, all right? And if they're a one-and-done playoff exit this year, they'll probably sitting around that 20th ranking once again this year. That's where they've been the last several years. And if they really crap the bed, they might get into, the mid to even lower teens. But if they make the playoffs and if they win a playoff game especially, they're going to be rising, or should I say decreasing here, their draft positioning before we get to the draft in Pittsburgh next year. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. What position of need should the Pittsburgh Steelers make the priority to take in round 1 of the NFL Draft next year? Let me know down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. And while I tell you about our sponsor, let me know which position the Steelers should prioritize in round 1 in Pittsburgh next spring. Now, before we get into the rest of today's show, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space nowadays is really a nightmare, guys. The quality products are always super expensive, and the refills are also ridiculously expensive, and all of a sudden your bank account is just getting drained because you just want to have a barbershop quality shave. And then when you try and save a little bit of money, you get stuck with dull razors that irritate your skin, cut your skin even, and you can really only use them once. They don't last at all. That's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you. And even after all this innovation that they've put into this product, guys, Harry's Plus still costs less than Gillette Fusion. And to put a bow on it all, if you don't love your shave, Harry's is going to make it right with you. No questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. And just to show you guys, I actually use and love this product. I brought my Harry's Plus razor with me here to work to let you guys know that I've been using Harry's products ever since I was in college. And, as kind of a broke college guy, as most college kids are, I wanted a good shave, but I didn't want to break the bank to get one. So I switched to Harry's, and I haven't switched back since. I use all of their shaving products as well, not just the razors. I use their awesome shave gel. It smells terrific, as well as their post-shave balm, which also smells really, really good. And I can't recommend this company enough, and I can't be more excited to partner with Harry's this football season. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer. And after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. And a big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. All right, we'll start our coverage here of Mel Kiper's round 1 draft targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers with his number 25 player on his big board, which is Mississippi State corner Kelly Jones. Mel says Jones can absolutely fly. I think he could end up in the 4.4 second range in the 40-yard dash in the lead up to the draft if he declares. But the third-year sophomore also brings terrific length, ball skills, and a feel for coverage. Jones seems comfortable with his back to the quarterback, is capable to locate the ball in the air, and is disruptive at the catch point. And Jones is also a willing tackler in run defense. And if the Steelers do decide to go with a corner, I do think Jones fits their kind of mold that they like on the outside. Then we get to defensive linemen out of Oregon. Hey, they took one last year with Derek Harmon. Could they go with a duck DT yet again here in Amari Washington, Mel's number 24 prospect in this year's class? Mel says this about the Duck defensive tackle. Washington is putting it all together. He is powerful. He's quick and explosive. He's tough as nails. Teams are going to be interested in that combination, even if his game is still a little raw with no career starts before this season. Washington can clog up the middle against the run, and he can power through with his bull rush to get interior pressure. We saw such a sack in Oregon's Week 7 game against Indiana. He is very difficult to contain at the point of attack. Washington is still developing, and he could continue to rise up boards before April. Then we get to Avion Terrell, the brother of A.J. Terrell of the Atlanta Falcons. Of course, when you have a brother in the NFL that's a great player, you're going to get a little bit of extra hype there. But Terrell from Clemson, Avion is a legit player, guys. He's the number 21 player, I should say, on Mel's big board. This is what he has to say about the Clemson Tiger product. Terrell is a proven cover man, much like his brother. Avion is consistent and reliable in man coverage. He can flip his hips, turn and run with the fastest wideouts, and still be able to locate the ball in the air to make the play at the right moment. He has 21 pass breakups over the past 2 seasons. Now, Terrell is going to get some knocks on his size coming in, but I think that he's a good cover guy. And in the modern day NFL, where size isn't necessarily as big of a factor, especially being in an off-cover kind of system, I think that Terrell would fit with any of those teams in the National Football League. The only problem with that is that the Steelers play more press and more bump and run coverage than most teams in the National Football League. Then we get to some wide receivers here. Denzel Boston is the first receiver talked about here by Mel Kiper Jr. on his list, the number 19 prospect on his big board. We talked about Boston yesterday on the show in a mock draft. That connects Boston to the Pittsburgh Steelers from Pro Football Focus. And this is what Mel Kiper Jr. has to say about the Washington Husky receiver. Boston has developed into a nuanced route runner who uses his size and physicality to shield defenders from the football. His length and catch radius make life miserable for opposing cornerbacks. And the way Boston quickly finds openings in coverage jumps out on tape, helping him to 14 yards per catch on the season. He has Velcro-esque hands, allowing him to go high or low to haul the difficult receptions. He's also 6'4", guys, so to pair him up with the 6'4" DK Metcalf here in Pittsburgh, I think would be a really good combination. But then we get to Vega here is what they call him at Penn State, the big offensive guard from the Nittany Lions. Probably one of the more tougher names to pronounce in the entire draft class here, so I'm just going to call him Vega here. But number 17 on Mel Kiper's big board, probably the best guard in the class, and could definitely be a first-round pick, especially because the Steelers may have a big need at starting left guard if they let Isaac Seumalo walk in free agency this year. Mel Kiper Jr. says Vega drives defensive tackles off the ball and sustains his blocks well. He can get to the second level and torque defenders out of the way, and he's incredibly agile at left guard for his size. Vega has 31 career starts and has given up only 2 sacks over that time, both in 2023. So that's definitely a player to keep your eye on here, and just to see if they bring back Isaac Seumalo next free agency. If they don't, certainly think this guy could be on the Steelers' radar with how much they value trenches in the first round under GM Omar Khan. But we're halfway there, guys. Like the video if you are enjoying today's show. If you guys want more draft content here on Steelers Talk, and you guys are enjoying this in-depth coverage that we have here today, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. Now we get into the top 5 round 1 draft targets from Mel Kiper Jr., and we get to Jermod McCoy, the number 16 prospect on Mel's big board right now. The DB out of Tennessee, definitely the best cornerback in the class, in my opinion, and Mel explains why here. McCoy hasn't played yet in 2025 after suffering a torn ACL in January, but he still has the chance to be the first cornerback off the board in April. He began his college career at Oregon State, picking off 2 passes there in 2023. McCoy's ball-hawking traits really emerged once transferring to Tennessee, as he picked off 4 passes and broke up 9 last season. Even if he doesn't make it back onto the field this season, his on-the-ball production will get day one interest. And with guys like Derek Stingley and others at this position, obviously coming off of injuries and all this different stuff, and even off years, and then playing really well in the National Football League, I think McCoy's tape in 2024 speaks for itself, and he'll be a high draft pick. Then we get to Peter Woods, the Clemson Tiger defensive tackle. It's been falling down some big boards this year because of a lack of production with the Tigers this season. Obviously very physically talented and very versatile defensive lineman out of Clemson. This is what Mel has to say about Mr. Woods. Woods hasn't been elite in 2025, but the skill set is exactly what NFL teams covet. He just needs to finish strong over the second half of the season. In the pros, Woods would fit nicely at 3 technique, though he has the versatility to move around on a defensive front. He plays on the inside the majority of the time, but he also can be disruptive off the edge. His strength will intrigue a lot of NFL teams no matter where he lines up. Then we get to the only quarterback on the list today, which is Alabama's Ty Simpson. Now, I know you're going to say Ty Simpson was terrible in the SEC championship game against Georgia, and he was. There are some rumors that he's dealing with a herniated disc in his back, which is obviously extremely painful and could be affecting his play. Not to make any excuses for the young man, but he is currently number 8 on Mel Kiper's big board, and he is still expected to be a first-round pick this year if he declares. This is what Mel has to say about the Bama product. His lack of experience might be a concern, as Simpson didn't start a game until this season, but the production is hard to ignore. Simpson knows the game and competes on every down. He's a battler who is always trying to make a play, sometimes to his detriment, and Simpson maneuvers well in the pocket and can beat defenses with his legs when the passing play isn't there. And in terms of Ty Simpson, guys, I would want medical checks on him to see exactly what happened with his back at the end of the season this year, to see just how serious that this apparent back injury is with him that he's playing through right now. But certainly somebody to keep your eye on, and somebody that could be available for the Steelers to maybe trade up into the teens for if they want a quarterback in this year's draft. Then we get to some wide receivers here to finish out the list, starting with Mekhi Lemon. We talked about Mekhi on the show yesterday with Field Yates projecting Lemon to fall all the way to number 20 to the Pittsburgh Steelers in his latest mock draft. Mel Kiper Jr. has Lemon as the number 7 overall player in the class and says this kid is a warrior who plays with passion. I'd want Lemon on my roster. He snatches the ball away from his body in an attacking manner, then runs with a fierce approach after the catch. He is one of my favorite players in the class, and he currently ranks 3rd in the nation in receiving yards. Would absolutely love Mekhi Lemon paired up with DK Metcalf here in Pittsburgh. And then to finish out the list here, the number 1 Mel Kiper Jr. round 1 draft target for the Pittsburgh Steelers is Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Of course, he was former teammates there with Will Howard, the backup quarterback and maybe future starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers there with the Buckeyes in their national championship run. This is what Kiper has to say about Tate's game. Ohio State has turned into wide receiver U, with Emeka Egbuka being the most recent star wideout to come out of Columbus. And while most of the college football world focuses on Jeremiah Smith, who isn't eligible for the 2026 draft, Tate is putting up some serious numbers and showing why he is a top prospect for this class. Tate has produced big plays on a regular basis, averaging 18.2 yards per catch this season. He's a precise route runner, has great hands, and displays outstanding body control. And he'll also happily block for ball carriers, which NFL coaches, like Arthur Smith, by the way, love to see. Tate has a lower body injury and has missed time, but honestly, guys, I don't worry about that too much. His tape speaks for itself. I think Tate will end up being a top 10 draft pick this year. So just to recap here, when it comes to the round 1 draft targets, according to Mel Kiper, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kelly Jones from Mississippi State, Amari Washington from Oregon, Avion Terrell, the corner from Clemson, Denzel Boston out of Washington. Then you got Vega there out of Penn State, the big guard. Then you got Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. Peter Woods, the defensive tackle from Clemson. Ty Simpson, the quarterback from Bama. Makai Lemon, the receiver out of USC. And then Carnell Tate, number 1 on Mel Kiper Jr.'s list for the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 1. Now, to keep you updated here on the quarterback situation and some potential trade-up targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they would have to really sell the farm to trade up where they're going to be drafting this year to go up and take Dante Moore or Fernando Mendoza. Mel ranks Dante number 1. He's had that for a while, and then he's had Mendoza at number 2. It certainly seems like if both of these guys declare they're going to be the first quarterbacks off the board, and they're going to go extremely early. So if the Steelers want to go get these guys, maybe they might be in position to go get them, depending on where they finish the NFL season this year. But they're definitely going to have to give up a first-round pick in 2027, maybe even another one in 2028 if they want any shot at going and getting one of these QBs. But who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comment section. Who do you want the Steelers to draft in round 1 of the NFL draft this year? And then whoever that is, tell me why down there in the comment section. Don't just tell me who you want. Tell me why down there in the comment section and give your reasoning for why you want that player to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. That's going to be it for today's edition of Steelers Draft News and Rumors. Appreciate you guys stopping by here today. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, we got Mailbag coming up here in just a second. It's not too late to get your question on the show. How are we doing in terms of questions here, Ponsi? Are we doing okay? But if you have any other questions, guys, Super Chat is the only way to guarantee your question gets on the show today. Otherwise, you can get your question in for free using hashtag Steelers. JV Free says trade up is not needed. Aaron Rodgers will play at least 3 more years now that Rivers has come back. I don't know about that, my friend. I think maybe Rodgers comes back for 1 more. Maybe. All right? And that's if he plays well down the stretch, the Steelers make the playoffs, and they don't win the Super Bowl. I think if the Steelers win the Super Bowl this year, he will just retire, and he'll leave the game on top. And honestly, Cam Hayward might follow him. So, we'll see what happens with Rodgers. Sounds good. Yeah, let's put on a 2-minute shot clock. If you guys have a question, feel free to get in on the action. Ponsi, well, that clock is ticking. What did you think about Mel Kiper Jr.'s list there of draft targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the fact that Ty Simpson's the only quarterback listed?
I mean, I feel like it's kind of a shocker. I feel like, but at the same time, realistically, who could the Steelers target in that range? Like, Ty Simpson might fall if he does declare.
Yeah, he could. It's possible for sure. I do think right now Moore and Mendoza would be taken above Simpson just because of how poorly Simpson has played, frankly, since Halloween.
I don't know if you could really make this excuse for him with that potential herniated disc, but I mean, if you look at the first half of the season, he looked amazing.
Yes, he did. He did.
And so, if I'm drafting him based off that first half of the season, I feel really good. The second half, I don't know.
And honestly, I thought Ty Simpson was more consistent and looked better overall than C.J. Stroud did at his time at Ohio State. And Stroud went number 2 overall. The thing with Stroud, he was so inconsistent. There was always those high-end flashes, but,
inconsistency always marked.
Inconsistency, and we saw that one game against Georgia where he was unbelievable. All right, remember that game in the semifinal?
He almost upset them.
Yeah, Ohio State almost took down Georgia there. I think it was in the Peach Bowl, was it? It was in Atlanta.
It was in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, it was in the Peach Bowl in the semifinal back when it was just 4 teams.
And of course, it came down to that field goal. He got them in field goal range, and they missed it.
Yeah, so he played great in that game against a pretty much NFL-caliber defense with the kind of talent they had on that Georgia defense that year. And that was the best he looked. And, I'd say the best Ty Simpson has looked is when he upset Georgia, the same kind of style of defense in Athens. All right, it wasn't even in the Mercedes-Benz Dome there. It was in Athens where he upset them and he played great.
Of course, in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, he did terrible.
But Ty is a little bit undersized or a little bit. He's not small like Kyler Murray, but he's a little bit smaller than you would want.
Than your prototypical quarterback.
Exactly, and he hasn't played well. And you know what I like to say, Ponzi? The last impression is the lasting impression. Okay, and the last time that we've seen Ty Simpson, he looked like doo-doo ass cheeks. So nobody wants doo-doo ass cheeks as their starting quarterback, as their franchise quarterback of the future. So I understand why people that the narrative now is shifting towards more in Mendoza. And if we get more of the same from Simpson in the college football playoff here and he stinks it up.
They get bounced first round.
If they get bounced in the first round, man, I think that his fall is just going to continue to go. But if he plays great in the playoffs and let's say Bama goes on a title run here and gets close or gets to the semifinal or even the championship and he plays really well in all those games, all of a sudden I think Simpson can get his name back in the discussion for being a top 5 to top 10 level pick. But right now, there's a question mark as to exactly where is he going to go, because there's some tape this year that's really high end, number 1 pick caliber stuff, and then there's another kind of batch of film this year where it's like, I don't know if we should take this guy in round 1. So he's one of the more interesting prospects for sure, a little bit more of a risk. But then again, every first round quarterback is a risk, right? Every single one.
Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, but who knows? They can go into the NFL and they could stink it up.
100%. I mean, just look at Mac Jones and Kenny Pickett. They were seen as more safer options, right, in the first round for somebody to take, and they end up being busts. So,
speaking of Kenny Pickett, he's starting this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to Kenny with the Raiders against the Philadelphia Eagles. Another one of his former teams.
Yeah.
His team that he grew up cheering for. So, good luck to Kenny there. But no doubt about it, he's considered a bust at this point in his NFL career.
And I think that one of these underrated points, and we talked about this a little bit, but with quarterbacks, it's really important to not rush them in. And I think if you draft Simpson, do not start him year 1.
I would say that with all of them.
Yeah.
Mendoza is not in a pro style offense. All right, and listen, man, I like Mendoza. I do. He's got awesome arm talent. Some of the tape is underwhelming to me. It is, just because of how easy a lot of the throws are. It's a lot of screens, and it's a lot of, RPOs and just manufactured completions that we see.
Granted, his timing is there.
Yeah, and, I think Mendoza has a good chance to be a good starter. But,
yeah.
Am I trusting him to run an NFL-style offense and expecting him to win a lot of games and lead a team to the playoffs right away? No, I'm not. I think he's going to struggle if he plays in year 1. Same thing goes for Dante Moore, who also plays in a very RPO and screen-heavy offense. I think if there's anybody that actually has a chance to do what Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels did last year and lead a team to a postseason run in year 1, it actually would be Ty Simpson. Because we've seen him work under center this year. We know that he has a lot of responsibility at the line of scrimmage and such. He's thrown a lot over the middle of the field, way more than Moore and Mendoza have, okay? In terms of pure progressions over the middle of the field, it's not even close. So, it's going to be an interesting discussion in this class, man. There's also Lenora Sellers. Is he going to be declaring, or is he going to, or is he just going to transfer? I think transferring is a big risk for him, because he could be the next Drew Aller.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Sellers has... But Sellers reminds me so much of Richardson, man. The flashes are there, but,
the consistency's not.
It's not. And, I was a big Anthony Richardson guy when he came out of college. I was also a big Malik Willis guy, so... But, the physical is right there. If someone can develop him, he could be a superstar in this league. But... you don't know if he's going to come out.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting situation, man. All right, let's get into the mailbag here. I hope you guys have some good questions for me. Of course, we've got the Dolphins game on Monday night coming up next week. So let's get ready for it right now with your questions here on Steelers Talk. Let me get my situation figured out here. All right, I am good. All right, Ponsi, let's get into it right now. The mailbag here for Week 15 is coming at you right now. Welcome into the Steelers Talk mailbag here for Week 15. It's my favorite segment of the week as I get to have that two-way conversation with you guys, the fans here of Steelers Talk. and get to answer your questions on the black and gold as the Steelers prepare to take on the Miami Dolphins here in Week 15 on Monday Night Football. Now, before we get into your questions today, make sure you click that subscribe button. If you want to get a question on a future edition of Steelers Talk, you guys can join us for our Thursday live shows that we do every single Thursday on this channel, and you guys can get your questions on the show for free, but you got to click that subscribe button to join our live community. Hundreds of people watch our live shows every single week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then hundreds of thousands of people watch our Steelers Talk watch parties on every single Steelers game day. So if you guys want to join the most interactive Steelers fan community anywhere here on YouTube, that's what we try to provide for you guys here on Steelers Talk. So greatly appreciate your guys' support. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's get into your questions here, starting with J5050. Says, honestly, Jack, do you personally believe in Tomlin? His numbers speak for themselves. We need to rebuild. Also, Lemon and Mayava in the draft. I mean, that'd be an interesting combo there, getting Mayava, later, in the mid-rounds there, and then getting Lemon. But, Mayava is one of these guys that, coming in from a very, air raidy style of offense under Lincoln Riley. Now, Riley has a very good track record of his quarterbacks working out in the National Football League, so we'll see. But Mayava really doesn't bring, in my opinion, high-level arm talent, and he doesn't bring a high level of off-schedule playmaking ability. So maybe, especially because he has that connection with Lemon, and he'd be an awesome number 2 receiver here in Pittsburgh to pair with DK Metcalf. In terms of the Tomlin question there, I like Tomlin for certain things, and like most coaches, I think that he has his good and his bad. I mean, the people that just say he sucks or, he's a terrible head coach, I just don't think, really have a grasp of, how difficult it is to have as many non-losing seasons in a row that he's had. He can't be a bad head coach and do that for as long as he's done it. But also, I think that there's very valid criticisms of Mike Tomlin of exactly why this team has been living in mediocrity for many seasons on end. And Tomlin has a big say in personnel, and a lot of the players that he's brought in have been older and washed up. That's on him. He hasn't been able to get the right coordinators hired here in Pittsburgh since his first try. His first try was actually his best one, bringing in Bruce Arians as OC and then keeping Dick LeBeau at DC. That was his best round of hires at coordinators his entire career. He hasn't been able to replicate that. And, when you combine all these different things, it just limits your football team. And even though I think Tomlin is an excellent locker room leader, I mean, players don't talk about their head coach the way they talk about Mike Tomlin unless he's a phenomenal leader of men. But at the same time, you can also point to things that Tomlin has done that has held this team back. So I don't blame Steelers fans at all for being frustrated with Tomlin, wanting a new voice here to try and get this team to the next level. But, I personally consider Mike Tomlin a Steelers legend for life because he won a Super Bowl here. I will always consider him that. But if he decides to move on this offseason, I would be excited to see a new head coach here in Pittsburgh. Then we get to Eric Dexter. He says, hey, Jack, what's our chance to win a playoff game? I mean, first you got to get there, right? You got to take care of your business here in the regular season. And I do think the chances of making the playoffs are more than 50%. And then the chances of winning the playoff game at home, I would say, is about 50%. So you kind of combine those two numbers, I would say 30% chance around that, 30% chance, maybe 35, 40% chance. I don't think, the odds are necessarily in the Steelers' favor to win a playoff game this year, but I absolutely believe it's possible, especially because if they make the playoffs, they're going to be playing at home. And if you're playing like, say, Houston or, one of these teams that, LA, one of these teams that play in a dome or play in a warm environment, playing in Pittsburgh in January is going to be uncomfortable as hell for those teams, all right? So I think there's certainly a chance the Steelers could win a playoff game this year, Eric Dexter, but right now I would put a less than 50% chance of it happening this year. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Will the Steelers wrap up the AFC North by Week 18? So before we even play the Ravens again, will they wrap it up over the next 3 weeks? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. For today's pinned question, in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Ethos. And while I tell you about Ethos today, simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. With that, let's have a word from our sponsor today. And guys, the summer before I started here at Chat Sports, my family unfortunately lost my late grandfather, who I was really close with. And as you tend to do when you lose a loved one, you begin to think about your own mortality and what would happen to the people dependent on you if something were to happen. With today's sponsor, Ethos, your family can be protected. If something were to happen to me, I want the last thing Cassie and the people that I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills. So I trust Ethos to keep them protected. As you probably already know, however, the process for obtaining life insurance can be super confusing or straight up annoying with how tedious the process can be. That's where our friends at Ethos come in. As of March of 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There's no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required, and you just answer a few health questions to get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos today. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily to get your free quote today. Application times may vary, rates may vary, and a big thank you to Ethos for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. All right, so we got DJ KJ here. Great profile picture there, my friend. Says, what's your and Ponzi's favorite player of all time? I'm guessing you're talking about Steelers player here. So for me personally, I got to go with Troy. All right, Troy Polamalu, with the hair. And, it was during my generation of the Steelers winning Super Bowls and all that different stuff. I love Big Ben as well. And I love James Harrison and all these guys that are, legends here in Pittsburgh. But I'm going to go with Troy Polamalu, the Head and Shoulders guy, commercials, legendary, all that great stuff. Ponzi, what was your favorite Steeler of all time? Debo, he says, James Harrison. All right, so, hopefully that does it for you there, DJ. $5 there for Sean. Darth Sean says, get well, TJ, you are demand. Let's go Steelers. This video and this mailbag is going to be coming out later in the week, probably on Sunday morning. So by this time, I'm guessing we get an update on TJ Watt, whether he's going to play, what the timetable is going to look like for him. We're filming this on Thursday when the news came out just hours ago, and we don't know much at this point. But we're certainly hoping TJ Watt can get back soon and he can make an impact for this team down the stretch. $2 from Bernard Nixon says, if A-Rod wants back, would you take him back? Bernard, it depends on how he plays the rest of the year. All right, I want to see him down the stretch prove that his body can hold up for, a 17-game schedule and the playoffs. And if he does that and he plays well, and he plays like he did against the Ravens last week for the rest of the way, I would absolutely bring him back. All right, but the chances of him retiring are still there. And if he doesn't play well down the stretch, I would not want to bring him back, and I'd want to bring somebody else in, especially if like a guy like Matthew Stafford is available, for example, if the Rams end up trading for Joe Burrow, which I think is more likely than people think at this point. I certainly think that that's a possibility that the Steelers could explore, but, I think that A-Rod, if he has a good, strong finish to his season here and the players want him back and all that stuff, I would absolutely be open to Aaron Rodgers coming back for another season here in Pittsburgh. Now, before we get into the rest of your questions here, guys, click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, if you bleed black and gold, you love our channel, you want to help us out, help us get new subscribers to the channel and new eyes on our videos, the best way to do that is click that thumbs up icon, because the more people that like the video, the more YouTube is going to recommend our shows to Steelers fans across the globe, which means more people watch the show and get introduced to the channel, more people subscribe, and so on and so forth. So it's a cycle of life here on YouTube, and do your part right now by clicking that thumbs up icon and helping out our channel. All right, we got one from Matt who says, I think Drew Aller would do well in Smith's offense. He is a Big Ben type of quarterback. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the consistency that Big Ben had, obviously, and he's a big guy. He's got a strong arm. Elastic arm that can do a lot of different things. He's kind of like, we've talked about some of these quarterbacks that don't have consistency in college football, like Aller. Some of the, best quarterbacks in the league were those types of guys in college. But I think with Aller, man, I think at this point, coming off the injury, with how inconsistent he's been and how inaccurate he was in college, he's going to be a day 3 guy. So listen, man, if the Steelers get him on day 3 with one of their many draft picks on day 3 coming up here in 2026, and they kind of make Drew Aller and Will Howard kind of duke it out for the future of the franchise, well, maybe they play behind Aaron Rodgers for a year, that's something I'd be open to. I really would be open to that, because obviously Aller has the arm talent to make it work here in the AFC North, all that stuff, but like people suggesting that the Steelers are going to take Aller in round 1 or round 2, I just don't see Aller being that hot of a commodity going into the NFL draft this year, but I guess you never know. JT Clover says, what do you think about Minka and how the Finns use him, and do you think the Steelers made a mistake on trading him? So it's kind of weird, right? Because The Dolphins trade for a safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and the Steelers trade for a slot corner, Jalen Ramsey, and now at this point in the season, they've switched, right? Ramsey's the safety, and Minkah is the slot. So, it's kind of funny how things work out in the National Football League, but I think they're both playing really well in their respective roles. Minkah's playing really well as their nickel, in that kind of Kyle Hamilton role in that Mike McDonald-style defense that Anthony Weaver runs in Miami. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers have Jalen Ramsey playing safety. He's playing great. He's hitting people hard. He's playing with good instincts. He's a natural at safety, in my opinion. So I think it worked out for both teams, man. Honestly, the worst part about that trade is you got Jonnu Smith to take up as many snaps as he does in this offense. He's been a complete disaster. Obviously, just imagine if this team would have kept Minkah in that trade and not traded him away, but obviously Minkah was a very core piece of that trade for Miami, and it prevented you from giving up draft capital in the 2026 NFL draft. They were very protective of those picks, and Minkah was slowing down, guys. Minkah was not the same player at the end of his Steelers tenure, and I think, Jalen Ramsey fits perfectly with what we do here in Pittsburgh. So I think it worked out for everybody, and sometimes that's just the way it works in the National Football League. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. What is your concern level for TJ Watt's injury history right now? Obviously, TJ has 4 straight years with some sort of injury that is really detrimental to the team. The last 3 years, an injury has kind of been the reason why the Steelers collapsed in those respective seasons. Hopefully that's not what we're experiencing for a 4th straight year here in Pittsburgh, but put it on a scale of 1, meaning not worried at all, he'll be back, before you know it, we're going to be just fine, to 10, meaning 5-alarm fire, DEFCON 1, the Russians just launched the nukes, all right? Let me know what your scale is there, 1 to 10. Let me know what you guys think, and that'll be it for this week's Mailbag. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show, getting your questions in, watching the live shows, all that great stuff. We're going to continue to get you guys A1 Steelers content here on the show every single day, all throughout the calendar year. So if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, Ponsi, let's talk a little Thursday night football before we sign off here. Falcons, Buccaneers, and this is a big one for the Bucs. Okay, I believe they're wearing their alternates, the creamsicles tonight.
I believe so.
And then the Falcons, obviously,
I think they're wearing their throwbacks too.
And obviously the Falcons, they're wearing their. Oh, really? So that should be an awesome jersey matchup tonight. But obviously the Falcons, they stink. They're in a bad situation right now with no first-round pick, a quarterback that's not looking great in his second year, and a head coach that seems to have lost his way there in Atlanta, and Raheem Morris. But they have an opportunity tonight, and we have seen in these Thursday night matchups, especially interdivision, things getting wonky. I mean, the only quote-unquote bad loss the Steelers have this season, in my opinion, was against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. You take away that kind of fluky Thursday night loss in a short week to Cincinnati, the Steelers have only lost to teams that are in the playoffs right now and have at least 9-4 records. All right, so the Steelers, in terms of they have high-quality losses for the most part this year, but, the one time where they actually slipped up and lost to a bad football team was in this kind of Thursday night situation. So call me crazy. The Buccaneers are kind of collapsing right now. I'm going to take the Falcons to win tonight.
I really want to say the Bucs. I really do. I love Baker Mayfield. I think he's a great quarterback. But I don't know, man. Kirk Chains might come out tonight. And I think they did the same thing last year on Thursday night. They upset the Bucs.
That's right, they did.
And I think something about Thursday night. There's just this aura.
Something about Thursday night divisional matchups specifically. These teams know each other. There's not a lot of time to prepare throughout the week. And these guys just go out there and bang their heads against each other for 3 hours. And, sometimes a bad football team can beat a pretty decent football team even on the road in these types of situations. So I'm going to go with the Falcons to win tonight. I know the Bucs should win tonight, but I'm going with the chaos answer here because I want, the Bucs. I want everyone to freak out that the Bucs lost to the Falcons. And they just lost to the Saints and Tyler Shuck last week.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, if the Bucs lose tonight,
yeah, it's going to be pandemonium in Bucs Nation.
Carolina
is going to be rejoicing.
Has the inside track to win the NFC South.
Yeah, you want to talk about worst teams in the NFL playoff picture? Fuck the Pittsburgh Steelers. Carolina's taking the cake, dude, if they make the playoffs this year. But then this weekend's matchup, or I guess it's not the weekend anymore when we play, but we will play the Miami Dolphins on Sunday, or Monday night, I should say, Ponsi. Yeah. And obviously the Steelers haven't won a primetime game this year. But this is a game where the Dolphins have a reputation for being a soft football team. Tua's been terrible in cold weather games throughout his career. Very well documented. He hates playing in the cold. It's going to be in the teens before wind chill on Monday night. And with the wind, who knows? It could get to even below zero conditions. Rodgers has played in these conditions a lot, playing in Green Bay. I think the Steelers' run game can get going. We'll see if it does. They haven't been able to get it going the last 2 weeks. But, it's going to be interesting to see what the Steelers can do on Monday night because they haven't been able to stop the run as of late. The Dolphins are excellent running the football with Devon Achane. But I think the cold weather is going to have an impact on this game, Ponzi. And if you watched our preview this week, I'm picking the Steelers to win this game.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, this does have one of those weird, a little bit of feeling of like, the Dolphins are a good team, but they really haven't played anyone in the win streak. Yeah,
they've won 4 straight games, so people are kind of freaking out about it. But the only good team that they beat was Buffalo. And, listen, man, that's an impressive win, but it's an interdivision win. Things get wonky inside your division. We know that. But at the same time, they swept the Jets. Good for them. They beat the Tyler Shuck Saints.
Beat the Commanders.
Who stink. So they barely beat the Commanders, by the way.
And they barely beat the Saints, too.
And they barely beat the Saints. So the fact that they're, going neck and neck with these bad football teams week in and week out, I just feel like Miami's overrated at this point in the season because they've won 4 straight and, that good for them. But, I feel like if the Steelers are a legitimate playoff team, they should be able to beat a warm weather team at home in a night game.
And they should be able to take care of business and then, keep that lead against the Ravens.
Listen, man.
Good football teams find ways to win.
Listen, man, if you win this game, that's huge for your chances of making the playoffs because who knows? I mean, we're going to be watching Ravens-Bengals this week on Sunday, right? Because Steelers won't play on Sunday. I hope each and every one of you guys is watching Bengals-Ravens because I think the Bengals might be able to sweep Baltimore. It's very possible, all right? The Bengals just lost to Cincinnati at home 2 weeks ago on Thanksgiving, okay? 2 weeks from today. They lost to Cincinnati at home, and they turned the ball over 5 times against the worst defense in the league in Cincinnati, all right? So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion at all that Baltimore wins. And if Baltimore loses against Cincinnati on Sunday and then the Steelers take care of their business and take care of Miami on Monday, you have a 2-game lead in the division with 3 games left to go with the Ravens having to play the number 2 seed now in the AFC, the New England Patriots, on the road, and then they got to go play the other number 2 seed in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers, in Lambeau. All right, so actually Baltimore's home for the Patriots game. But you guys get my point. All right, the chances of Baltimore, getting to within 1 game of the Steelers by Week 18 goes down pretty dramatically unless, A, the Steelers crap the bed, or, that's pretty much how it would happen.
And for reference, if the Steelers win on Monday and, the Ravens lose, the Ravens need to lose 1 more game.
And they're done.
We did all the playoff calculations. We did it with Trader Joey here. If they lose a divisional game, it's pretty much over.
Yeah. This is a big game on Sunday, guys. I really hope you guys are watching it. I know we will be.
We will be watching and praying on the downfall.
Hoping the Ravens lose against the Bengals. And if that happens, guys, the Steelers certainly have the...
But something tells me, Sperry, we were talking about this. They just flex Ravens-Patriots.
Yep.
And something's telling me the NFL's not going to allow that.
Yeah,
it's going to come down to Week 18.
You better believe the NFL, and just keep your eye on this, guys, the NFL wants to see Steelers-Ravens in Week 18 for the division, okay? So that's going to mean Ravens are going to get calls, Steelers are going to get fucked by the refs these next few weeks, all right?
You heard it here first.
Just keep that in mind, all right? So when we see bad non-DPI calls or whatever against the Steelers, just know that's what the NFL is doing. They're trying to get it so that the Steelers and Ravens play for the division in Week 18 in Pittsburgh because they don't want that to be a dud of a game. They don't want Will Howard to start in that game for the Steelers, right?
We do.
We want the Steelers to have it locked up, but the NFL definitely does not, all right? So look for the NFL and the officials here to maybe, push along Baltimore victories in areas where they can in the weeks to come. But that's just the conspiracy theorist in me, But that's going to be it for today's show, guys. Before we get too off the conspiratorial deep end here, I really do appreciate all of your guys' support. Thank you guys so much for watching our live show here this evening. Enjoy Thursday Night Football tonight. We will see you guys on Monday night for Steelers versus Ravens here on Steelers Talk Live. And until then, guys, here we go, Steelers.